Believe it or not, this video was written before Game Theory's video came out, so that's why I could finish it so quickly. But today we're going to talk about the main theory within his video and what mine was going to solve. And that's about the rogue indie game developer, a piece of lore thrown at us that caused a lot of confusion to the point Scott Cawthon himself had to come out and make a statement about it, trying his best to debunk some theories. Although some fans were somehow still divided on what Scott was trying to get across with it. Ultimately though, the discussion went quiet for a while. Until recently, a new story within the Tales of the Pizzaplex series, and now thanks to a new game theory video saying FNAF 1, 2, 3 and 4 events didn't even happen, has reignited said discussion. Today we're finally going to put the nail in this coffin and debunk what some people claim to be the FNAF reboot, and answer the question, was everything before Help Wanted even real in universe? Don't forget to quickly scroll down, subscribe, turn on notifications, like the video, scroll back up and enjoy. The indie game developer was introduced to us in Help Wanted, a man who went rogue and made video games based around the events and rumours of Fazbear Entertainment. So then Help Wanted was created to make fun of said games and basically discredit everything that they feature, framing the game developer as a lunatic. But this posed a question. Since they used an image of Scott Cawthon himself as the game developer, doesn't this mean that Scott is now canon in the universe? Meaning that all the FNAF games up to this point actually never happened, and this game is the start of the FNAF reboot? Well, that was the most popular theory 3 years ago, until Scott himself stepped in and intervened, and made a statement about the whole thing, immediately debunking that theory. Quote, "How do you take characters that are canon, along with characters that are questionably canon, and characters from every point of the timeline, and throw them all together in one game that is canon?" That's quite the problem when you think about it, but it was important for me that Help Wanted means something. I didn't want just a meaningless collection of minigames, although I'm sure most people would have been okay with that. I wanted it to be canon, and that meant that I needed to solve the substantial question of how, end quote. This statement gives us the answers already. The indie game developer storyline helps make this game canon to the main timeline, while featuring characters such as the Phantoms, Nightmares, and Easter egg characters that no one in Fazbear Entertainment would even know about, and some that might not even exist, and are simply just there for fun. Scott just needed a link between the past games and this game to make it canon, and be able to include Easter eggs without it automatically making the game non-canon. So the indie game developer storyline is exactly how he did that. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want Lolbit and Ruff to be canon? If our FNAF games were canon and they were the in-universe games, then that would mean Scott himself is canon. But earlier in the same statement, he says, "The short answer is no. My name is never actually mentioned in the game. Yes, I use my own picture for this indie developer because it's an obvious parallel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually me in universe." This outright confirms that Scott Cawthon isn't canon in universe, meaning Scott Cawthon's FNAF games aren't canon in universe. The in-universe games and our real games are different. Scott debunked this himself. This is what the clarification post was about. We even know that there are some differences in the games, such as in Help Wanted, it's shown that the FNAF 3's location burns down in Night 5, within the in-universe FNAF 3, but we know in our real games that FNAF 3 burns down after Night 6/Nightmare mode. That was all debunked 3 years ago, so why is it even a discussion anymore? Well, as always, the books. You probably heard this in Game Theory's video, but within the new Tales of the Pizzaplex book, Happs, there's a short story called Help Wanted, which seemingly gives us some sort of an insight on the indie game developer. The thing is, MatPat used this as evidence that FNAF 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just video games in universe. They aren't real and the events within them didn't even happen. But doesn't it prove otherwise? The indie game developer is confirmed to have made and finished 3 games, but wasn't able to finish the 4th. This would help differentiate the in-universe games and our real games even more with what we know in Help Wanted. The sister location animatronics that we know from our real games are from the 5th game, are in the in-universe 4th game and 4th location. Sister location /FNAF 5 simply wasn't made within this universe, leading to them combining the stories together for the 4th and final in-universe game, as we see in Help Wanted. What doesn't make sense with this theory is that if FNAF 1 to 4 aren't canon, but Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, and Ultimate Custom Night are, then how come those canon games directly reference and talk about what happens in FNAF 1 through 4? Another thing that should be mentioned is the fact that within Security Breach, underneath the Pizzaplex we straight up see the FNAF 6 location, further proving that we are still indeed in the same timeline as Scott's games. All the events did happen and do exist. The thing is, Scott has made fun of the dream theory multiple times before this, so wouldn't this be a complete 180? This is basically the dream theory 2.0, saying that all the events in games aren't real, and instead of claiming it to be a dream in universe, now claiming it to be video games in universe. But still the same concept that nothing ever happened. Scott wouldn't do this. Two quick things that I want to touch on after watching the game theory video is that he says FNAF AR probably isn't canon, which it undoubtedly is. FNAF AR directly links and leads up to security breach with the Vanessa emails and the entire Lewis storyline. Check FNAF's video about why Lewis is important. Finally, he also claims that this all might mean that the animatronics aren't possessed, which we know is just not true. The animatronics are possessed. We literally see in FNAF 3 that when William destroys and opens up the FNAF 1 suits, spirits that were possessing the suits literally come out of them. Something else to prove that they are possessed is the ultimate guide, outright saying that the puppet is possessed, and reading the statement, one thing that seems certain, the animatronics themselves have been possessed by the spirits of the dead children, looking for revenge. This was originally just going to be about the indie game developer and FNAF's reboot rumor, but with Game Theory's video releasing the day I was going to release this video, I might as well go through some of his points and either agree or disagree with them. And unfortunately, I have to disagree with it as it would completely break FNAF as we know it. And Scott debunked this exact idea 3 years ago. But either way, I would now consider the unsolved mystery of FNAF's reboot solved.